Well, hello everybody. Jay Rhymes here with the Periodic Review. Hope you all are having an incredible day. Today is going to be the birth of something a little bit different for our channel. I've been kind of thinking about doing this for a while now, probably for the last few months. I've just kind of been deciding, what I wanted to start with this particular series. Now, this particular series I'm going to call The Deep End. And the reason I'm calling it The Deep End is because I want to do a little bit more deep dives into different topics, different subjects, whether I'm going to be more analytical or maybe I'm just going to be more explorative. It's going to be an opportunity for me to learn and to grow and to share with you what I understand and what I've learned. That's kind of the premise and the idea behind The Deep End. Now, this particular series is going to be an ongoing series. It's going to happen maybe once, maybe twice a month, depending on how quickly I can turn around my outlines so I can do a good job at them. And they're going to continue to grow and to evolve. But I decided that I'm going to start with good men or gentlemen, or what is a good man, kind of a thought process. And especially since our viewers are majority male and usually around 25 to 35, I think is our kind of target demographic right now, is that I think it's really important to kind of think of a lot of these important things about what it means to be a good man. So without further ado, let us do the intro for The Deep End. All right, so with this particular series, I'm going to be doing the first episode as kind of the introduction as far as like what we're going to start with. Now, I really think it's going to evolve and probably get bigger into more in-depth topics when it comes to being a good man. Things like, when it comes to corn, when it comes to video games, when it comes to how much time you should be putting into being a part of your family versus how much time you're putting into your job, having a balanced life when it comes to things that are physical, mental, and spiritual, just kind of things like that, things that kind of I feel are important in what makes a good man. So let's go ahead and let's jump in, and we'll try to keep these deep dives to about an hour, just because I don't know if I can go on longer than that by myself. I might be able to, but I kind of want to keep it around an hour for everybody. So the first thing we want to do is we want to talk a little bit about what it means to be a man, what it is a man. So a man, obviously, fundamentally, is a man that is an adult human male. Pretty simple explanation. Of course, it can go deeper than that. And I do want to say that this can apply to a lot of people, a lot of individuals, that can span even more those that may be adopting more feminine characteristics rather than masculine. And for those that are more masculine characteristics and feminine characteristics, I think depending on the situation, especially when it comes to those that are married, I've kind of noticed that once you marry, the opposing force, the female and the feminine, you start to kind of blend those different energies together as far as the way that you think, the way that you speak, the way that you communicate. It all kind of blurs together, which is kind of interesting. But for the most part, obviously, a man is someone who is in the masculine energy. Prior to adulthood, a human male is referred to as a boy, a male child, or adolescent. During puberty, hormones which stimulate androgen production result in the development of secondary sexual characteristics, thus exhibiting greater differences between the sexes, male and female. Now, these include greater muscle mass, the growth of facial hair, bone density is taller, heavier than women, and a large larynx, also known as the Adam's apple, lower body fat composition, and also a man's voice will often deepen. These are all characteristics of a man. Now, the primary sex characteristics or sex organs are characteristics that are present at birth and are integral to the reproductive process. For men, primary sex characteristics include the twig and the berries, because obviously I can't, for whatever reason, say these things on social media and videos get taken down, so I have to be kind of a little bit careful about what we say. Chromosomally, a man is XY, while a woman is XX. Men produce more testosterone than estrogen, where women produce more estrogen than testosterone. Men do not have periods and menstruate and are unable to gestate human life as they lack a womb, uterus, etc., because we produce the sperm. Men can become fathers, obviously. Now, I think it's really funny that I feel the need to start off the Good Men series into the deep end is because we kind of live in a world today where there's a lot of confusion going around as far as like what it is a man, what is a woman, what is an adolescent girl or adolescent boy. I had a comment the other day on one of my videos where I said biological men, and they were upset because I said that, because they basically said that children were just children. Like there wasn't really male or female force when it comes to children. But of course me and my followers do believe that there is obviously a biological difference between men and women, boys and girls. This is something fundamental to our nature. This is something fundamental to biological sciences, and it's also fundamental to Christian belief when it comes to men and women. So this is something I really feel that I have to at least address and share, because it's really important, because it starts to get confusing, especially when it comes to trying to deal with all these pronouns, deal with all of these issues with understanding who can and cannot go into which bathroom or locker room and stuff like that. And it's just important that we have that baseline. But obviously leave your comments in the section down below. Hopefully I will earn your subscription today, everybody. So if I do, definitely consider giving a like and a subscribe to this channel. Definitely turn on notifications so you don't miss a content release. You can also add any information in the comments below. This is going to be an ongoing series, and I'm hoping to add a lot more depth and breadth into this. So if you have additions or encouragements or ideas, definitely let me know. If you want to be anonymous, you can send them to my email, which is theperiodicreview@gmail.com. Now, there has been some interesting facts about men throughout history, and I think this is something that's very specific to men. So men often face conscription into military service through the draft or mandated military services in other countries, or are also directed into risky professions with high mortality rates. Now, what's really interesting, especially when you go into the historical issues that we've had as far as like safety concerns over back in the day, definitely look up the history around the building of the Empire State Building. I think is very, very interesting. Seeing how many individuals lost their lives, whether they fell or they died due to exposure or exhaustion and things like that. I think the building of the Hoover Dam is also a very interesting historical look on men, because mainly they were mostly men that were working on these different projects. How many men would fall into the cement and unfortunately weren't able to pull them out, and so they are encased in that cement today at the Hoover Dam. It's just really fascinating to see how important it is to have men in this world that are able to do that. Another interesting, aside from like military and firefighting, police officers, very unfortunately nowadays, it's a very thankless job, but for me to you, like all of our first responders, I feel very, very grateful for. I feel very akin to, because I have had military, like with my grandfathers and uncles, Many friends in the police force, especially out here in a little small town. You kind of get to know everybody. My heart goes out to those individuals because they are a risky profession. They can be very dangerous. I mean, just look at the different shorts and videos of individuals who, on just like a regular traffic stop, hey, I'm pulling you over because, you were going 10 miles over the speed limit, so I'm going to give you a ticket, and then all of a sudden it's a gunfight. It's a crazy world we live. I think another profession which is really interesting is the deep diving of individuals who go into the ocean bottom floor to pull cable, to do repairs on different underwater facilities for our pumps offshore, a lot of welding and stuff like that. Very, very dangerous jobs. Obviously, mostly men that do those jobs. All these things are very, very important. Engineering, building, construction, blacktop and paving for our highways and our roads. I mean, these are things in infrastructure that we need. Like, we can't survive and continue to upkeep these things without men. A study of conflicts in 13 countries from 1955 to 2002 found that 81% of all violent war deaths were male, which is an astronomically high number. Especially in the past. I know it's a little bit different nowadays. Now, women can go to the front lines and they can do other things other than like doctor and nurses and stuff like that. They do a lot of engineering work. They do a lot of IT, fix stuff on machinery and stuff like that. It's definitely become more blended. I think there's a lot more increase in females into what is historically known as male-dominated workforces, occupations, things like that. Let's see, 55% of men consume alcohol each month, which is higher than women. Men make up approximately 50% of the population. Men make up nearly 80% of unlifing rates. This is according to a 2021 overview, approximately 4 times higher than the rate of females, which is a very, very sad statistic, to be honest with you. When I found this out, I actually found it out through a very emotional YouTube video where it depicts Mr. Jordan Peterson talking about, disaffected men. I'm going to try really hard not to be emotional about it because with all of the hate that men get, the vitriol, the toxicity against men, it's honestly, it's no wonder that this rate is so high, because we're constantly, well, maybe not me personally, maybe I'm just generalizing right now, but men in general seems that, they are always in positions of high, risk, of high mortality, puts themselves in possible mortal danger, and they're not thanked for it. I think that's something that's very important when it comes to, like I was saying, our first responders, our military, our police officers. I think it's really important to say, hey, thank you for your service. When you get pulled over for a ticket, not to give, that officer a bunch of grief because, they're putting their life on the lines every single day. Where one day they could be completely unlifed and now they leave behind a wife and a couple of kids. It's very important to me that people understand the need for men like that, especially very masculine men who are willing to go and fight for our freedoms, to fight for our rights in this country. And I know we're kind of in a whirlwind right now where it seems like laws are being blurred, where it seems like, policies are overcoming laws and people just saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. And then the mob mentality of, you are going to do what we say, otherwise we will do bad things to you. We live in a very, very strange world right now. And when it's, so very anti-men, especially with these different podcasts of women, constantly shitting on men, who are just trying to live their lives and to do the best that they can. My heart goes out to men. Life expectancy of males, 73.5 years versus females, 79.3 years. And so what is that? Almost 6-7 year difference, something like that. So, that's usually due to bad health, high stress. Again, the different capacities where, men are, pass away due to, exposure, or they're unlife during a war, things like that. In 2001, there were slightly more male victims of violent crimes than female victims. About 1.4 million for male and 1.2 for female victims. So, 2021, a lot more violent crimes done against men. People don't, for whatever reason, don't like to talk about male-on-male violence. They don't want to talk about these kinds of things because it either goes against a narrative, which sadly it's, kind of in the political realm right now, where individuals are kind of passing up a lot of these different statistics and a lot of these different topics because they're either too hard or they don't help their project to make men look bad. And so when you hear a statistic as, there is almost, I believe the number is around 200,000 person difference of male being victims of crimes than females. That goes against the narrative of, DV, SA, CA. Yeah. I can't say the full words because I don't want to get flagged, obviously. But if you know and understand those abbreviations, we don't want to talk about the bad things that are happening to men, because apparently men are the ones that are bad in this world. And when you look at the statistics, it's far from the truth. Another statistic which I forgot to put in here is divorce rate, where women are likely divorced 60% more than men in a dispute, and that rises up to about 80 or 90% depending on the statistics you are looking at. If those women are highly educated. Unfortunately, the numbers show that women are at a high rate to end a marriage rather than men. Which definitely, depending on how you look at it, I look at it as that men are trying their best to work through it. And, although as men, we are not perfect, we are trying hard to keep those families together, to keep the kids together with their father and their mother. And it's just really sad today that we are living in a day and age where marriage is being marginalized, where marriage is being demonized, especially in the social media realm. Instead of champion individuals who want, a certain lifestyle. It's really funny, these different sides that are proclaiming and demanding, a reclamation or a need or a want to have a certain lifestyle, but then demonizing those who want, a traditional lifestyle when it comes to marriage. And it's like, I just want people to honestly live their lives and to be happy. If, you want to have a traditional marriage, dope, good on you. Very, very happy for you. Go out there and live your best life. If you want to have a life where you're polyamorous and you feel like it's a lot more fun when you have more people involved, more power to you. If you're happy, go live your life. You're adults, go live your life. But it's just sad that certain lifestyles are just like, oh no, you're not allowed to do that. But if you're an adult, do your thing, man. All right. So now that we're kind of past a little bit of what it means to be a man, biologically, mentally, spiritually. Let's talk a little bit. We talked a little bit about some interesting facts about men throughout history. Now I kind of want to do an overview of what we're going to talk about in this series. And I think it's going to grow over time. Like I said in the beginning, I think we're going to have a lot of really interesting conversations when it comes to relationships. That's something I feel like, my 9 years of being married and very happily married as of right now, and, going to be happily married in the future because I'm going to continue to work on my relationship and how important that is from a masculine men's perspective, and focusing very, very hard on being a good man. I think a lot of these things are going to apply to those different topics. So what does it mean to be a good man or a gentleman of a conduct? In today's age, it is not enough for men to just simply exist. Now, my stepfather and my brothers and I would sometimes joke with the phrase, "That's what a man does." So it'd be like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go open the door for my wife." Well, yeah, that's because that's what a man does. There's kind of this ongoing joke in the back of my mind, kind of applies to the good characteristics and the good actions of what it means to be a good man. And so for me, never has that saying started to ring truer than it comes to being a good man today. Because although I think men are doing the best they can, I still think we can always do better. I think that's something that's really important to understand, is that when you're through the journey of life, it's important to constantly work on oneself. I think it's very, very important that we spend the time to really work on ourselves, to be the best person that we possibly can for ourselves, and especially if you're somebody with a significant other, i.e. married to your spouse, that you are becoming the best man you can be for that significant other, for that spouse. And so this is kind of like my hope and prayer, is that this particular deep dive series into the masculinity of men will aid in myself and others to be good men, not only to be good men, but to become great men. And so that's kind of my hope and prayer with this particular series. Now, let's kind of talk a little bit about some of these characteristics. Now, with positive thinking, I think it's very, very important to kind of embrace the word "and" instead of either or, because I kind of feel like a lot of times we don't embrace those the kind of verbiage that's very, very important, I think, for when it comes to bettering oneself. For instance, I think it's really, really important for a man to have a stoic confidence, but also have a capacity of emotional availability. And I think a lot of times people think of stoicism or emotional availability, we kind of think of those as clashing characteristics, where I really do believe that it's kind of a blend and kind of a mesh or a marriagement of embracing the "and" of those two characteristics. And I think having an imbalance of one of those or the other, I think, can lead to a really dark or an imbalanced path. And for me, I think it's really, really important that we have balance in our lives. I really do believe that it's something that we need to embrace with the and kind of rejecting the either or, and bringing all of those things into our lives. Because when it comes to being a man and being in our masculinity, especially when we start to become entwined with the feminine energy, we start to adopt and kind of blend those two things, not becoming like, I really dislike it when people are like, "Oh yeah, this guy's a pussy because, he has to ask his wife before he goes and hangs out with the boys." And it's just like, no, that's just a part of life and a part of being in a relationship. You're always on the same page with each other. It's important to discuss and to figure out what it is, the expectation when it comes to, spending time with friends, spending time with family, and spending time with your spouse, and kind of having a balance of those things. So embracing the power of "and" while rejecting the nonsense of "either or," I think is really, really important to start with these particular characteristics. And so I've kind of merged some of these opposing characteristics and kind of blending them together. Now, obviously, I could be completely wrong about these things, but I feel like they apply, and definitely, let me know your thoughts. So what are some characteristics of great men? Let's start with the first one. And again, this is just going to be top level. We're already almost, we're going on. I kind of want to get this in within an hour, so kind of want to not to dive too deep on these particular topics. But in my opinion, men should live a life as if God does exist and reject lawlessness. So that belief in something greater than yourself with a healthy set of rules to live by are fundamental principles to leading not only a good life for yourself, but also will affect positively for others. And in addition, the 10 Commandments are a great framework of tenets to live by and should be included in your fundamental principles of life. This is Exodus 20, 1 through 17. So just for everybody to be aware, my personal connection with God and with Jesus Christ, I am an ex-Mormon at this time, and I am taking an agnostic theistic approach when it comes to believing in something greater than oneself. I don't believe that there is a way to prove or disprove in a greater something greater than ourselves, as in like a God, whether there's a man in a white robe and a great big beard with Jesus standing next to him in the heavens, and eventually we're going to die and return to live with them. I honestly don't know. But I want to live my life in a way where I'm going to do good for myself and to others. And in seemingly the Judeo-Christian principles seem to apply, especially when it comes to a good man. So my goal with that particular topic is to ensure that people understand that we kind of have this line of thinking that believing that there is a God and kind of aligning our lives with, there's something greater for us after this life. And so we should do our best to live in a way where we treat others with respect, with love, with loyalty, things like that, following after the the greatest teacher that we understand, which is Jesus and his teachings. I think someone could, outside of being the godlike Son of God, whether his mission was divine or not, again, I don't know where I'm at with that right now in my personal progress. But he's Jesus Christ in that figure, in the stories told in the Bible, the Old Testament, New Testament. It's definitely something I think to aspire to, because if we think of the self-help, kind of genre when it comes to self-teaching books, learning and stuff like that, I kind of feel like Jesus is like the greatest example as far as like trying to be the better person in every situation, trying to be the person who connects people that are disconnected, trying to be the person that's going to disengage from situations that are not going to be productive, that are not going to be better for them. Trying to be the better person when it comes to somebody who's angry and upset and wants to harm you and stuff like that. Obviously, I do believe, it's important to protect ourselves, especially when in these day and ages when people think it's okay to to go up and grab you and stuff like that, which is a very, very weird time. There's actually a very interesting story that comes with that. I think I told this a while ago. But one of the first 6 or 8 months my wife and I moved to southern Utah, I was out walking my dog, and I'd been doing it ever since we moved in. And I would kind of walk out from our condos into another condo complex and just kind of walk through their little park that they have there. And it was just basically a couple of benches, some grass and some trees. It wasn't really anything, crazy. And there's rarely anybody there when I go walk my dog in the afternoons, because I was able to get home early and people were already at work. So it kind of seemed like it worked out. And one of these particular days when I was walking, I was approached by a Richard of the community there. and he decided to try to escort me out of the complex. This is a very open complex. There was no locked doors, locked gates, or anything like that. The entrance and exits were very open. He decided to question me, and during this process, I told him, "You can leave me alone. I'm going to keep on going." And long story short, he decided to grab me, and I got very, very upset at that time, and I looked at him and I balled my fist up, and I was like, "Sir, you do not touch me. I'm leaving. I'm going this direction. I'm not coming back. If you need to call the cops, you go right ahead. I'm going to leave." And so I left. I mean, he followed me all the way out, but it was really, really good that nothing physical happened, because this is an older man. I think he was probably in his late 60s, early 70s, platinum white hair, but he thought he could, tell me what to do. And it's really funny when people are much shorter and smaller than me and they think they can take on a 6'3", 300-pound man. But I digress. So I think it's really important, coming back to this, is that we live our life as if, there's something greater than ourselves, that God does exist. We're going to have a reckoning at the end of this time in our lives, and we're going to go into the next life or wherever it is or whatever happens. We really don't know, but seemingly people have, I think statistically, people have a better life when they believe these things. And rejecting lawlessness, I think, is really, really important to add to that. Because rules are there for a reason. And yes, I understand there are laws and policies and stuff that can be oppressive and stuff like that. But I think in general, especially since we do live in America, I feel like we do have, good laws. And I think it's important to follow them to the letter. And I also think it's important to be helpful when it comes to individuals that are, in the military and the police and stuff like that. They're just doing their job. Especially when it comes to traffic stops. It's really, really funny watching these different videos of people getting ornery with them. But that's something I definitely do feel is really important. So the next section is men should have stoic confidence and have the capacity of emotional availability. Hold on one second. I really need a cough button, but my allergies are bugging me. Now, for me, this is something this is a me problem right here, because I really struggle with the word vulnerable or vulnerability. I can't even say the word vulnerability. Vulnerability. Because of the way that this word translates as a noun, I kind of struggle with it. So the state or properly being vulnerable, the quality, a state of being vulnerable, susceptibility to attack or injury. The state or condition of being weak or poorly defended. So when I hear things like, men need to be more vulnerable, boys need to be more vulnerable, I don't like that word, because when it comes to being a man or a boy, we live in a society where it's important for us to not be vulnerable. However, I think what's more important than vulnerability is emotional availability. I think that having the capacity to have kindness and love and compassion for others, I think is more important than letting my guard down when somebody attacks me and let them punch me. I don't think that's a great idea. Obviously, you should defend yourself, but when it comes to emotions, I think being able to have the capacity to have that is more beneficial than being completely vulnerable. I personally do not like the term vulnerable, as they are already too much attacks on men, inability or willful ignorance to not be emotionally available to their family, wife, and kids, being able to have the balance of justice and mercy as needed in all their daily comings and goings, will build confidence in oneself and portray good leadership for those to follow. Through this, you can build loyalty with family, friends, spouse, even coworkers. You must sacrifice your ego and allow yourself and others to grow. that's where I think it's important to have. I think it is important to have some walls. I think it's important to have some secrets. I think it's important to have defenses when it comes to these different things, because obviously there are people in this world that will use our weaknesses against us. And that's why it's important to have emotional availability, because being vulnerable can open yourself to more attacks than you would have wanted. I think one of these examples is crying in front of a woman. I think is something that they talk about a lot in society. And although if you cry in front of the right person and the right people, obviously you're not going to be vulnerable to attacks. Like, people aren't going to be using that as, oh, you're such a pussy, blah, 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 you're not a good man because you cry. Like, I think there is appropriate times for men to cry. And I think crying in front of the right people is what's important. Because obviously you don't want to cry in front of your manager. You don't want to cry in front of your coworkers. Like, I get it. But I mean, if you smash your thumb to the point where you got to go to the hospital, I think there is, there's something to say that is an okay place to yell, scream, curse, and even cry. But when it comes to things like when you have that emotional availability, when you find things that are sad or things that are happy, like, what's really interesting about tears is that they're not necessarily sad. They could be necessary. Like, it could be fundamentally happy tears. But again, like, exposing those walls and to, bringing down those walls to be emotionally available to, like, your spouse is really important. And again, this is where it comes to important when you're in the dating phase, when you're looking for that significant other, when you're finding that person in your life. Obviously, you need to have a lot of conversations. You need to have a lot of opportunities to grow and to go through the dredges of this world, as far as, like, losing a job or leaving a job or being fired from a job. A loved one passes away. Your childhood pet, dies. When you get a pay cut, when the Mother Nature hits your town and destroys your home. When you're going through these really dark and very hard things, it's important to have the right person and the right people in your life. And if you don't have the right person, the right people in your life, it may be time to take a look at them and to see if they're important to keep there. Just because you have a blood connection to somebody, if they are an absolute toxic person in your life, it's important to ensure that you have the right people in your life that will not only support you, but you will support them. So there's definitely some reciprocation there. That's really important. Love is really important. Actions with those others is important. I help you, you help me. These are the fundamentals as far as, like, making sure that you can be emotionally available to somebody. Now, it took a while for me to have that emotional availability to my wife, especially when it comes to asking for what I want. And as far as, like, telling her, hey, this is something that's really important to me. Can we please do things a certain way? Or can you help me with this? Like, making sure that you have that. But again, there's going to be a lot of more topics along those lines as we go forward. Like I said, these can be completely deep dove, like right now, but I want to do a light overview. So let's move on to the next one. Now, men should have an equal duty to God, country, and their loved ones. Now, a great example of this reference was from my time as a Boy Scout. Although the scouting program has become somewhat obscure, even going against their tenets as a program for boys, the Scout Law and the Scout Oath are equal to no other, and one should know them, live by them, and encourage others to follow them implicitly. So for those who haven't had the opportunity to be a Boy Scout, let me read these off to you, because Boy Scout Law, and was it the motto? I just read it now. I just completely the law and the oath. Scouting.org. So the Scout Oath. On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country, to obey the Scout law, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. Meaning straight and narrow path, not... Anyways. Scout Law. The Scout Law is 12 points. Each is a goal for every Scout. Scout tries to live up to the law every day. It is not always easy to do, but a Scout always tries. I like that. So a Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. Now, just so that we are all on the same page here, when it comes to obedience, like following the rules of your family, school, and pack, obey the laws of your community and country. Obviously, those are very, very important. Now, what happens is, coming from somebody who is from a previous faith and now has kind of doing my own thing when it comes to my faith with God and Jesus Christ and the Spirit. It's important to understand when things get to the point where it is overcoming your personal beliefs, your personal bright lines, as they say, from the law perspective, like non-negotiables. Like, obviously, if you're going to tell me to do stuff because I told you to, then we probably need to have a conversation about that. Or you're going to be blessed because of this, as long as you are obedient and you do these different things. It's definitely important to kind of take a look at that and make sure you're not falling into prey of a cult-like organization. And that's because, from my experience, it got to the point where it was overcoming my personal beliefs and my personal values, my core values. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, this is not for me anymore. And so sometimes it's important to take a look at that when it comes to obedience to an organization, making sure that people are doing it for the right reasons, making sure that people are obviously treating others very well, that the organization rules make sense and treats other people equally, as well as it not being oppressive and asking more than what is required, I think is really, really important. So men should have honesty and kindness. Now, one should live life in a way that anyone can see you as being trustworthy. However, honesty can be a two-edged sword. While being explicitly 100% honest without fail could potentially put you in a precarious situation, in offering others having explicitly 100% kindness could potentially put you into situations where people can abuse and manipulate you, It seems best to have a balance of the two, dependent on a case-by-case basis, and be a good judge on how to balance the two. Apparently I didn't proofread this very well. So having a good balance of honesty and kindness is very, very important. I think in addition to honesty and kindness is obviously to know your boundaries, definitely know your expectations as far as with friends, with family, with significant others, with those around you. I think it's really important to have boundaries and barriers. Things that you for sure won't do, but things that you obviously, feel you should do, and try to be moral in those kinds of things. Men should have a love for respect for yourself, a love and respect for yourself and others. I did not proofread this at all. An echo of honesty and kindness. One should always have self-respect for yourself. This is the barriers and expectations. Stop beating yourself up for your missteps in life, as it does no one any good to dwell too long on the past. I think that's very, very important. That's something I've noticed that I've struggled with, especially when it came to previous employment, previous coworkers that I struggled with. It doesn't do well to hold on to those things and to keep them in the present. It's good to overcome them, to kind of process through those emotions, good and, those bad emotions, to the point where you go, that was a really great learning experience. That's basically what you want to come out of issues that arise that don't bode well for yourself and for others. And so when you get through those things, put them in the past, leave them in the past. Obviously, you're never going to forget. As human beings, we definitely seem to hold on to the things, especially to other people wronging us, to the point where that could become very dangerous for ourselves, because it'll be very difficult for us to trust others. It can be very, very difficult for us to try different things and to overcome change. The question I like to ask myself is, okay, what's my level now as far as like my willingness to accept change? Scale of 1 to 10. What's my happiness level? Scale of 1 to 10. What's my willingness to learn? Scale of 1 to 10. And then working yourself up back to where you're like, 6, 7, 8 on those scales. Because if you're not willing to learn, if you're not willing to change, you're not willing to hold on to the happy things, then you're going to continue to move backwards, or even stay pat. Like you're just going to stay in the same spot you're at and not changing to the point where you could better yourself and you could push yourself and move forward, but you want to hold on to those things. Well, this person wronged me and I'm going to be upset at them for the rest of my life. And it's not good for oneself, honestly. Gotta learn to let it go, man. In addition, respecting yourself is also not allowing others to walk all over you, to manipulate, or to abuse in any manner. This also goes duly to others, as they deserve as well not to be walked on, manipulated, abused, and so forth. So this is the whole treat others as you want to be treated. Obviously, if you treat it goes without saying that with human beings, we seem to mirror each other. And so if you're treating somebody well and you're treating someone with respect and you're using really, really respectful language, in conjunction with that person, obviously when I speak to my mother or my dad, I try really, really hard not to use bad language. Now, I have a pretty foul mouth. My wife knows very well. And if you've watched her podcast, that I still use, foul language on occasion that, people consider foul, but obviously I'm not going to use that language in front of my mom or my dad, or at least try my very, very hardest not to. But there are going to be some other people like my friends and stuff like that, or other coworkers who use that same language. I go, okay, I feel safe. I feel like they can still respect me even though I'm saying these, different words. So it's definitely important to kind of gauge who you're speaking to. Do unto others as you wish done unto you. It is also difficult to truly platonically love others if you first have not love for yourself. And I think that's a really important walk of life. When I talk about bettering ourselves, we're going to take a good hard look at the situations of, okay, what am I doing wrong here? Or what do I need to do differently? Or, put myself into their shoes. What are they thinking about the situation and what I said there, or how I made them feel, or stuff like that. Now, when it comes to feelings and emotions, you're in control of you. You are the person that are in control if you want to be happy, if you want to be sad, if you want to be angry or frustrated. And you can choose to, have those opportunities to learn and to grow or to change. But ultimately, you're in charge of your own emotions. Emotions are reactive as far as if somebody says something derogatory or whatever, you can choose to be upset and angry and mad at them. I think something I try to do is to remember that people have bad days too. Or, if they're driving fast and they cut you off and they didn't use their blinker, maybe they have to go poop. Maybe they have explosive, diarrhea and they can't hold it and they got to get to the closest bathroom. So they probably didn't drive very well around you. These are kind of the stories I tell myself, which kind of help me to understand that, people are on different planes, different levels as far as where they're at mentally, or if they're in a very stressful situation. I mean, maybe their kid's about to be born and they want to make sure to get there before, the baby comes out, and that's why they're rushing. I mean, who knows? So it's best, like my mother would always tell me, is to not borrow trouble when there's no trouble to be borrowed. and telling these different stories to yourself in your mind and be like, well, maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they're in a rush because they have to go to the bathroom. Or maybe they're in a rush because somebody got hurt in their family, so they're trying to get home to take care of the situation. Maybe the police showed up at their door and your wife's upset, so you got to get home. These are the kind of things I think of. All right, so men should be good communicators and have emotional intelligence. Now, this is something different than emotional availability. This is now emotional intelligence. Firstly, you should always say what you mean and mean what you say, and do what you say. Very, very important 3 things. So always say what you mean, always mean what you say, and do what you say. And so if you don't do those things, this is a very, very good time to look at yourself and go, okay, what didn't I do here? What did I do here? What is it that I did that maybe hurt somebody or things like that? These are important things to think about. There should not be a need to have any cryptology to your words. Like, this is something that I had to learn because I kind of grew up and had some, emotional trauma in my life, and it kind of put me in a certain mindset. And as I got married, my wife and I, we have worked through a lot of these different things. And especially when it comes to being cryptic with your words, like you're basically saying one thing, but you're meaning another. It's important to be able to have an honest conversation to the point where people hear your words, they understand them completely of what you just said. For instance, I'm going to Walmart to pick up a pair of pants. Like, there's no way to go, unless somebody has a tone, I'm going to go to Walmart, I'm going to go get a pair of pants. Dang it. Obviously tone is very, very important. That gives definitely some more some context to subjects and stuff like that. Tone's very, very important, but the words need to mean what you say. So if you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it. And then do it exactly how you say it. It's very, very important. It puts people in a lot of confidence in you. Also, people do not always see eye to eye, and one should be able to accept that fact and be content. A man should have the capacity to see things through other person's eyes, to put oneself into the other person's situation from their perspective, and that will give you the ability to have compassion for others. So one thing, like an example I can give you with my wife and I, with being good communicators as men and having emotional intelligence with your spouse, is to ask questions so that you know what's going on. So if my wife comes to me and says, my coworker at work was really rude to me. Okay, so from a man's perspective, when we hear my coworker was mean to me today, it puts us in a place where, as men, we want to be fixers. We want to get in there. We want to solve the issue so that our spouse is happy. That's not always the case, I have learned with my wife. Now, obviously, it might be different for everybody else's wife, but particularly with my wife, I have to, when I hear my coworker was mean to me today, I say, wow, that really sucks. I'm really sorry that happened to you. Do you want me to fix this? Do you want me to commiserate with you and say, oh yeah, he's such a jerk? Or do you just want to vent and you just want to be a soundboard? And getting feedback from that will let me know, what the situation is, as far as like, well, I just had a bad day. I just kind of want to vent. Okay, great. How was your day? What sucked about it? What do we need to change? Like what happened? Wow, your coworker was mean to you that way. He yelled at you, man. That really sucks. I'm really sorry that happened to you. And I think acknowledging and validating what your wife says in that situation, especially now that you know that she doesn't want you to fix it. She just wants to say, today sucked. And I want you to agree, to validate that. That's really, really important to your spouse. And so, especially with my spouse. And so having that emotional intelligence, having that better communication and trying to figure out, okay, do you want to vent? Do you want me to validate you? Do you want me to fix it? This will give me the correct perspective and to put myself in your shoes and be like, yeah, you know what, that really sucks. I'm really sorry that happened to you. Good communication, emotional intelligence. Men should be accountable for their actions, good or bad, and have loyalty to others. Wow, we are. Oh, this is a lot of stuff. So I'm not going to just read through this stuff. I think we have time for maybe one more, and probably what I'll do, I'll just read the topics I think of these really quick, because eventually we're going to really deep dive in these. As you can see, like I already have like little blurbs and little paragraphs under all of these different characteristics I believe a great man should have. And I just want to just jump in and dive into it. And I think I'm doing that a little bit more than I really should have. And because of the time, I want to keep these about an hour. So let me go ahead and read the rest of these to you. So men should be accountable for their actions, good or bad, and have loyalty to others. Very, very important in my opinion. A man should be romantic and humorous with their significant other without degrading oneself or others. So I want to be very, very brief on this, but obviously romance or intimacy, it doesn't always mean sex, the sex act. A lot of the intimacy and stuff means outside of that. However, intimacy can lead to, wonderful sex, as we're talking to adults here. But I think it's really, really important to be romantic with your partner, with your spouse, and to have a good sense of humor and not degrade oneself. I think it's really, really hard to hear from a man's perspective, especially when we're talking about, or they're trying to be humorous in front of their wife, but they're being very self-deprecating, being like very, very hard on the self, or having humor with oneself at the expense of them. I don't like that. I think that's really, really telling as far as like where they're at, as far as with that. What was the first one? Second one, stoic confidence, I think is really, really important. And when you self-deprecate, that really overrides a lot of that. And when people look at men, they want to instill trust and confidence and, safety and stuff like that. So something to definitely think about. And especially when it comes to relationships, you're constantly dating each other. Yes, you kind of ebb and flow between, your very, very romantic courting days versus into your kind of more roommate phase. Like I want to dive a lot more into these kind of different things, but it's important to always keep that candle burning alive, that fire burning alive. Like you want to always be, expressing that intimacy towards each other, as if you are still dating, as if you are still courting each other, because that really does keep that flame, that fire alive. And so you always want to be romantic in conjunction with having humor, if you're able to. Man should be goal-oriented and choose to execute their plans by staying on course. Very, very important that we make goals and we go for them. It doesn't help anybody if you just make goals and then not do anything. And then staying the course is also very, very important, because especially when it comes to things like getting into a new job or going through different schooling so you can get a certificate or get your degree, which I have my personal reservations on that. But for some people, that's very, very important, and, more power to you. Sick. Go for it. But you definitely need to get off your ass and go to work. So when you get home from work, like you have a lot of extra time, maybe your spouse is still at work or whatever the case may be. Maybe you start working on your side project, start working on a side hustle. Maybe you start thinking about a business plan or maybe a business name and what kind of goods and services you're going to do. And then you have the tenacity, you have, oh goodness, what's the word? Did I even put it in here? I don't think I did. The perseverance to continue with that with as much as you possibly can to better your life, I think is really important. Man should strive to do their best in all things and to know when to shut up. Okay, hold on. Let me read this really quick. I'm trying to remember this last one. A man should strive to do their best in all things and know when to shut up. Often we get stuck into jobs or careers we do not plan or wish to be in. So what? Oh, okay. Yeah, shut up as far as like stop complaining. Like, yeah, everybody's in a job that they probably didn't want to be. So what? Shut up. Like, it doesn't dwell to be negative. Like, start working towards your next one. Start going to school. Start getting your certificate. Go to a trades academy or trades school or whatever they're called. Get your certificate. Get your electrician's license. Get your plumber's license. Your CDL. Be a truck driver. Whatever the case may be. Start working on your next thing to start leveling up. Don't be complacent. Don't be lazy, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Be all that you can be, the best, the greatest, and leave no doubt in your superior's mind, like your boss's mind, that you are what you are. However, if someone outperforms you, your best, so what? Congratulate them. Embrace them, thank them for their example, and even ask them for their assistance on how you can do what they can do, and then shut up and listen. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them proportionately. Okay, so this also comes down to when you see somebody outperform you at work. Yeah, dude, John, you did a great job. Dude, that's so awesome. Like, you're the top salesman. You sold more cars than anybody else. Can I get some time with you? I'd love to learn like what your process is and how you're doing such a great job. Like, I think that's more appropriate than being upset and being mean about it. So these are the things you can expect from this particular series. And we're going to start deep diving into these different things. I'm going to put another hour into the first one, probably the combination of the two. So you kind of get a good compare and contrast. But yeah, so I guess welcome to the deep end. This is Good Men. Part 1, the introduction, and I'm excited to do this next part for you guys. Expect it at least once a month, maybe twice a month, depends on how fast I can get these together. And from my family to yours, good night.